Okay, now we're on page 178 and 179 of the World Wars, and this is going to be a little different. This is about the secret war. Knowing what your enemy is going to do is a priceless asset for a military commander. During battles, armies use reconnaissance patrols and aircraft to try to discover what the other side is doing. But it's even better to know in advance what the enemy intends to do. Code breakers, spies, and informants can provide this information, often at great personal risk. But the world of espionage is dark and cunning, and what appears to be vital information can turn out to have been deliberately planted by the enemy to mislead. Plans for many of the greatest battles of the war were reported by spies before they happened. Richard Sorge was a German journalist who worked for the German embassy in Tokyo. But unfortunately for the Germans, Sorge was secretly working for the Soviets and was sending frequent reports back to Moscow. When Sorge discovered that the Japanese had no intention of joining the Germans in their attack on the Soviet Union in June of 1941, the Soviets were able to transfer crack army divisions from their eastern border to their western front line. This ensured that the Soviet Union was saved from defeat. Sorge also warned them about the Pearl Harbor attack, but the Russians didn't pass on the information to the United States. He was arrested in November of 1941 and executed in 1944. Rudolf Rössler, codenamed Lucy, was a Swiss citizen with several German military friends who detested their own Nazi government. They sent Rössler a constant stream of information, which he sometimes passed on to the Allies. The invasion of Denmark and Norway, German tactics during the invasion of France, Operation Barbarossa, and subsequent Nazi campaigns in Russia all came through Lucy. The Germans had a spy in Turkey, codenamed Cicero, who was the manservant of the British ambassador there. He spied for money and passed on to the Nazis details of the Normandy landings. He was paid in forged banknotes. Luckily for the Allies, his reports were disbelieved. Intelligence organizations can sometimes be too cautious. In May of 1944, a crossword compiler for the Daily Telegraph was interrogated by 2 intelligence officers on suspicion of being a spy. In the month before the D-Day landings, his crossword had contained several secret code words relating to the invasion: Utah and Omaha, the 2 American landing spots; Mulberry, the makeshift piers to be used on the beaches; and Neptune, the naval operation on D-Day. Eventually, they accepted that it was just an extraordinary coincidence. The full story only emerged in 1984. The crossword compiler was a teacher who had asked his pupils to suggest words. One of his pupils lived next to a camp of soldiers making ready for the invasion and had picked up the words by eavesdropping on their conversations. Any messages sent by the radio can be picked up by an enemy listening in. So throughout the war, both sides used codes. Perhaps the most difficult one to crack was the German Enigma code, which was constantly being updated. But thanks to the extraordinary efforts of Polish and British codebreakers, for most of the war, the Allies were able to uncover some of the German plans in advance. The war in North Africa, the Battle of the Atlantic, the invasion of Sicily and Italy, and the Normandy landings were all Allied victories won with the help of Enigma codebreakers. The Americans broke Japanese codes too, enabling them to intercept Japanese naval forces during the crucial Battle of Midway in 1942 and to shoot down a plane carrying Admiral Yamamoto in 1943. German codebreakers also cracked the British codes used to transmit convoy routes. In 1942, 2,000 convoy signals a month were being picked up by the German Navy and posted on to U-boat commanders searching for targets. The codes were changed when the British discovered that it had been broken. And the world of espionage is full of twists and turns, and it's easy to make mistakes, as British intelligence shows when they interrogated the compiler of the Daily Telegraph. And here is Bletchley Park, where British intelligence translated German signals echoed by the Enigma machine, which was shown here on the right.